Remember when Christmas dinner meant watching your mom poke cloves into a ham covered in bright red cherries and pineapple rings? When church basements smelled like lime Jell-O salad and someone always brought that wobbly aspic ring nobody wanted but everyone expected? These weren't fancy restaurant meals. They were family rituals from coast to coast. Prairie potlucks, Ontario buffets, Maritime halls, and Boxing Day spreads. Today, we're diving into 20 Canadian Christmas meals that vanished after the 1980s. Maybe you remember the paper frills on a crown roast, or that blue flame dancing over plum pudding, or the cheese ball rolled in nuts that sat out all evening. What happened to these dishes? Why did they disappear from our tables? Which one did your family make every year without fail? Let's unwrap these lost Christmas memories. 1. Crown roast of pork with paper frills. Picture this, a circle of pork chops standing upright like soldiers, bones Frenched clean and capped with pink paper frills. The crown roast of pork was the showpiece roast families chose when turkey felt too ordinary. Mid-century Canadian households saw this as a status symbol for Christmas Day dinner. It said sophistication. It said effort. Butchers would prepare the cut special, curving the rib rack into a crown shape and tying it with kitchen twine. But crown roast was expensive. As lean meat health trends took hold in the late 80s and early 90s, fatty cuts fell out of favor. Turkey became the default holiday centerpiece across Canada, cheaper per pound, easier to carve, and endorsed by nutritionists. The paper frills looked fussy. The carving felt theatrical. Families wanted simpler. By the mid-90s, crown roast had quietly left most Christmas tables, remembered mainly through old cookbooks and faded Polaroids of relatives standing proudly beside silver carving trolleys. 2. Pineapple ring glazed ham with cloves and maraschinos. Cross-hatched ham studded with whole cloves, pinned with canned pineapple rings, and dotted with bright red maraschino cherries. This was magazine-perfect Christmas. The sweet, savory glaze, brown sugar, mustard, pineapple juice, made the whole house smell like a holiday. Moms would score the fat in diamond patterns, stick in the cloves one by one, then arrange the fruit like they were decorating a cake. This ham appeared in Canadian living spreads and on TV commercials. It looked abundant. It tasted like celebration. Kids fought over the pineapple rings. But in the 90s, health waves pushed back against canned fruit and sugary glazes. Nutritionists warned about added syrups and sodium. Fresh became the new ideal. Honey mustard took over from sweet fruit toppings. The clove-studded pineapple-crowned ham started feeling dated, too sweet, too retro, too much like something from a black-and-white cookbook. By 2000, most families had moved on to simpler roasts or plain-baked ham with minimal glaze. 3. Roast goose. British-Canadian tradition. Before turkey dominated, many old-school Canadian families roasted goose for Christmas. This was Dickens-era heritage brought across the Atlantic, rich, dark meat with crackling skin and plenty of fat for roasting potatoes. Goose felt formal, it felt British. It felt like the Christmas carol everyone read in school. But geese were harder to find than turkeys and cost more per pound. As supermarkets standardized around turkey in the 70s and 80s, goose became a specialty item. You had to order ahead from a butcher or farm. The fat rendered everywhere, needing careful management. Younger generations preferred the milder, leaner taste of turkey. By the 90s, roast goose had nearly vanished from mainstream Canadian Christmas tables, surviving mainly in niche communities and heritage cookbooks. The fat catcher pan and carving ritual became memories of another era, when Christmas dinner meant something older, heavier, and harder to find. 4. Cornish game. Hens with wild rice. Individual roasted hens for each guest, stuffed with wild rice and herbs. This was dinner party chic in the 70s and 80s. Cornish game hens made intimate Christmas dinners or Boxing Day meals feel fancy without the size of a whole turkey. Each person got their own bird. It looked elegant, plated up with vegetables and a drizzle of pan sauce. But game hens were fussy and pricey per person. They required individual prep, cleaning, stuffing, tying, timing. Families with kids found it impractical. You couldn't easily carve and share like with turkey or ham. As Christmas gatherings either grew larger or shrank to immediate family only, the individual bird approach lost appeal. By the late 90s, most households had standardized back to turkey or ham. Easier to portion, simpler to cook, cheaper overall. Cornish hens drifted into special occasion restaurant menus, no longer a home Christmas staple. Telling and preparing this video took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the video. 5. Rumaki, bacon-wrapped chicken livers and water chestnuts. Tiki-era hors d'oeuvres on Christmas canapé trays. Rumaki was everywhere at house parties in the 60s and 70s. Chicken livers wrapped in bacon with a water chestnut slice, skewered with a toothpick, and broiled until crispy. They came out on silver trays alongside deviled eggs and cheese cubes. Rumaki tasted rich, salty, smoky. They disappeared fast at gatherings. But organ meat fell out of favor. By the late 80s, cholesterol fears and squeamishness about liver pushed rumaki off most menus. Younger hosts didn't grow up eating liver. The tiki trend faded. Bacon-wrapped appetizers shifted to scallops or dates, no organ meat involved. Rumaki became a retro curiosity, remembered by older Canadians who still laugh about sneaking one from the tray before dinner. The toothpick skewers and broiler smoke are gone now, replaced by simpler, less adventurous appetizer spreads. 6. Seafood or tomato aspic rings. Savory gelatin molds suspending shrimp, celery, or tomato in wobbly jelly. Aspic rings were magazine-perfect centerpieces in the 50s through 70s. They stretched ingredients, kept well in the fridge, and looked impressive unmolded onto a cut glass stand with lettuce leaves around the base. Women's magazines ran aspic recipes every December. They represented sophistication and planning. You made them a day ahead and they held their shape through dinner. But tastes shifted hard against savory gelatine. As fresh produce became cheaper and year-round access improved, the need to suspend ingredients in jelly vanished. Continental cooking brought vinaigrettes and fresh salads. By the late 80s, aspic rings felt dated and unappetizing. Younger generations found them strange. The wobbly texture, the fishy smell, it all felt wrong. Aspic disappeared from Christmas tables almost overnight, surviving only in retro food history articles and jokes about weird 50s food. 7. Jellied lime salad, neon green Jell-O with grated carrot, tinned mandarin oranges, sometimes cottage cheese or mini marshmallows mixed in. This was a church basement classic, showing up at winter buffet tables from Manitoba to Alberta. Perfection salad sat in ring molds or square pans, sliced into neat blocks that held their shape on paper plates. It was sweet, tangy, cold. Kids loved the color. Adults appreciated that it was easy and fed many. But gelatin salads declined sharply in the 90s. Fresh, leafy salads with real vegetables took over. Health trends pushed away from sugar-heavy side dishes. The bright green colors started looking artificial and unappetizing. By 2000, lime Jell-O salad had become a punchline, something only grandmas still made. The recipe cards got tucked away. The ring molds went to thrift stores. Perfection salad vanished from most Canadian Christmas tables, remembered mainly by prairie families who still talk about that green stuff everyone brought to potlucks. 8. 7-layer salad. Make-ahead fridge salad for Boxing Day spreads. 7 layers stacked in a tall trifle bowl, shredded iceberg lettuce, frozen peas, diced celery, shredded cheese, bacon bits, hard-boiled eggs, all sealed under a thick mayo glaze. You could see the stripes through the glass. It survived long car rides to relatives because everything stayed cold and separate until serving time. It looked dramatic and fed a crowd. But nutrition pushed away from mayo-heavy salads in the 90s. New salad norms arrived: spring mix, arugula, balsamic vinaigrettes, fresh herbs. 7-layer salad felt heavy, dated, and too rich. The frozen peas seemed lazy. The mayo glaze looked unappetizing. Younger cooks wanted lighter, fresher sides. By the early 2000s, 7-layer salad had mostly disappeared, remembered fondly by people who grew up watching their moms. Assemble it the night before Christmas. The tall trifle bowl moved to the back of the cupboard. 9. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows. Orange mashed sweet potato topped with a layer of melting marshmallows, baked until golden and gooey. This was American-influenced but showed up at Canadian Christmas tables through the 70s and 80s, especially near the border. It tasted like dessert, but served as a side dish. Kids loved the marshmallows. Adults appreciated the color on the buffet table. But sweet potato casserole felt too sugary for modern palates. Health trends discouraged mixing vegetables with candy-like toppings. As roasted vegetable sides became trendy, Brussels sprouts, squash, root vegetables with herbs, sweet potato casserole felt childish and outdated. By the late 90s, most Canadian families had dropped it, replaced by simpler roasted sweet potato wedges or mashed sweet potato with butter and cinnamon. The marshmallow topping became a retro curiosity, remembered mainly by people who immigrated from the United States. 10. Cheese ball, rolled in nuts. A sphere of cream cheese, cheddar, and spices rolled in crushed walnuts or pecans, served with crackers on a Christmas platter. The cheese ball sat out all evening, softening at room temperature, while guests spread it with butter knives. It was easy to make, looked festive, and fed many. Every party had one. Every grocery store sold the ingredients. Recipe cards passed from friend to friend. But cheese balls fell out of style in the 90s. Pre-made dips and hummus took over. Charcuterie boards became trendy. Fresh cheese, cured meats, olives, fruit. The cheese ball started looking dated and heavy. Food safety concerns grew about leaving dairy out for hours. By 2000, cheese balls had mostly vanished from Christmas spreads, replaced by brie wheels or cheese platters. The walnut-crusted sphere became a punchline in retro party articles. Only older Canadians still remember shaping them the night before Christmas. 11. Brussels sprouts with canned cream. Sauce-boiled Brussels sprouts, smothered in thick cream of mushroom soup straight from the can, baked until bubbly. This was vegetable side dish logic from the 60s and 70s. Cover everything in cream sauce to make it palatable. Brussels sprouts were cheap, available in winter, and turned soft under the soup blanket. It filled space on the buffet table and counted as eating your greens. But taste changed dramatically. Roasted Brussels sprouts with bacon or balsamic became the new way. Crispy edges, caramelized flavor, no canned soup. Health trends pushed away from processed cream sauces. Fresh preparation mattered. By the mid-90s, the cream of mushroom method felt dated and unappetizing. Younger cooks rejected it entirely. Boiled sprouts in cream vanished from Christmas tables, replaced by roasted versions that actually tasted good. The Campbell's soup can moved back to the pantry for casseroles only. 12. Ambrosia salad. Whipped cream or Cool Whip mixed with mini marshmallows, shredded coconut, canned mandarin oranges, maraschino cherries, and sometimes pineapple chunks. Ambrosia salad was sweet, fluffy, and sat on buffet tables next to the turkey. It wasn't really a salad, more like dessert pretending to be a side dish. Kids loved it. Adults accepted it as holiday tradition. But ambrosia salad lost appeal in the 90s health wave. Too much sugar, all processed ingredients, no nutritional value. Fresh fruit salads took over, actual fruit with mint or honey lime dressing. The Cool Whip and marshmallow combination started seeming gross to younger generations. By 2000, ambrosia had mostly disappeared from mainstream Christmas tables, surviving mainly in church potlucks and nostalgic family gatherings. The recipe still exists in old cookbooks, but few people make it anymore. 13. Butter tarts. Butter tarts never fully vanished, but the tradition of making dozens from scratch on Christmas Eve did. Women would gather in kitchens for marathon baking sessions, rolling pastry, mixing brown sugar filling, crimping edges one by one. They'd make 50, 60, 70 tarts for family gatherings and gift-giving. It was ritual. It was connection. It was exhausting. But home baking declined as lives got busier. Bakeries sold quality butter tarts year-round. Frozen pastry shells simplified things. By the 90s, fewer families made massive batches at home. The marathon session tradition faded. Butter tarts still appear at Christmas, but now they come from bakeries or grocery stores. The kitchen gatherings, the flowery counters, the late-night crimping, that's mostly gone. Older Canadians remember the work and the warmth. Younger generations just buy them ready-made. 14. Tourtière, spiced meat pie, usually pork and sometimes beef or veal, spread from Quebec across Canada in the 60s and 70s as migration and intermarriage mixed traditions. Non-Quebecois families adopted it for Christmas Eve or Réveillon-style dinners. It tasted savory, warm, and distinctive with cloves and cinnamon. It represented French-Canadian heritage on broader Canadian tables. But tourtière stayed mostly in Quebec and slowly faded elsewhere. English-Canadian families returned to their own traditions. The spice blend seemed unusual to prairie and maritime palates. Frozen grocery store versions tasted disappointing. By the 90s, tourtière had largely retreated back to its Quebec roots. Outside Quebec, it became something you tried once at a friend's house rather than a regular Christmas dish. The meat pie tradition survived, but regionally rather than nationally. 15. Boil in the can Christmas pudding. Christmas pudding that came in a tin can. You boiled the whole can for 2 hours, opened both ends, pushed the dark pudding out, and served it hot with brandy hard sauce or custard. This was British tradition simplified. For Canadian convenience, no steaming for hours in cloth, no fancy pudding basins, just a can from the grocery store and a pot of boiling water. But even this simplified version lost appeal. Younger Canadians found the dense, dark pudding too heavy and strange tasting. The tradition felt too British for evolving Canadian identity. By the 90s, Christmas pudding had mostly vanished outside older British-Canadian families. Lighter desserts took over: cheesecake, pavlova, pie. The boil-in-can method seemed old-fashioned. The pudding itself seemed foreign. The tins disappeared from grocery shelves. Only specialty British import shops carried them anymore, serving a shrinking, nostalgic market. 16. Mincemeat tarts. Not the modern fruit-only version. Original mincemeat with beef sweet, dried fruits, spices, and sometimes actual meat. These tarts showed up at Christmas alongside butter tarts, baked in mini pastry shells, and served warm. They tasted rich, spiced, complex, like nothing else on the table. Older generations loved them. Recipe books dedicated whole sections to proper mincemeat preparation. But tastes shifted away from meat in dessert. Vegetarian versions with just fruit and spices took over. Even those declined as younger generations found mincemeat tarts odd and unappealing. The dense filling seemed too heavy. The British connection felt outdated. By the late 90s, real mincemeat tarts had nearly vanished from Canadian Christmas tables. Butter tarts won. Mincemeat became something grandparents remembered, but no one made anymore. The jars of prepared mincemeat sat unsold in grocery stores, eventually discontinued. 17. Homemade eggnog with raw eggs. Thick, frothy eggnog made from scratch. Raw eggs, cream, sugar, nutmeg, and rum or brandy, whipped together and served cold in glass cups. This was party tradition from the 50s through 80s. People made big batches in punch bowls. It tasted rich and boozy. Kids got the non-alcoholic version. Adults refilled their cups all night. But raw egg safety concerns killed homemade eggnog in the 90s. Salmonella warnings scared people away. Pasteurized store-bought eggnog took over. Safer, easier, already mixed. The ritual of making it disappeared. The taste changed. Thinner, sweeter, less boozy. By 2000, few Canadians still made eggnog from scratch. The punch bowl sat unused. The silver ladle went to storage. Store-bought cartons replaced kitchen tradition. Older Canadians remember the foam, the nutmeg sprinkle, the homemade richness. Younger generations only know the carton version. 18. Tom and Jerry. A warm holiday cocktail made from spiced egg batter mixed with hot water and rum or brandy. Tom and Jerry was theater and comfort combined. Hosts would make the batter ahead, then mix individual drinks in special ceramic mugs with script lettering. The drink came out foamy, aromatic, warming. It felt festive and old-fashioned, even when it was popular. But the fuss factor killed it. Making the batter, separating eggs, whipping to stiff peaks, storing properly. Too much work. Raw egg fears didn't help. By the 90s, people defaulted to beer, wine, or simpler cocktails. Tom and Jerry mugs went to thrift stores. The tradition survived mainly in a few bars and nostalgic households. Younger Canadians never heard of it. The warm egg cocktail concept seemed bizarre. What was once Christmas party standard became retro curiosity, something old movies showed, but nobody actually made anymore. 19. Cherry cheese pie. No-bake pie with cream cheese filling on graham cracker crust, topped with canned cherry pie filling. This was the reliable bring-a-dessert option for office parties and Boxing Day gatherings. You made it the night before, it kept in the fridge. It sliced cleanly on Corelle plates. Dream Whip or Cool Whip lightened the cream cheese base. The red cherries looked festive. But packaged whip lost cachet in the fresh food movement of the 90s. Bakery desserts and tiramisu-style creations took space. No-bake pies seemed lazy and processed. Younger hosts wanted to impress with from-scratch desserts or artisan bakery purchases. By 2000, cherry cheese pie had mostly vanished from Christmas spreads. The canned cherry topping seemed cheap. The Dream Whip seemed dated. The graham crust seemed too simple. Only older Canadians remember slicing it at church basement gatherings. 20. Figgy Duff at Non-Newfoundland. Tables. Newfoundland's steamed raisin pudding, Figgy Duff, sometimes traveled across Canada when families moved west for work in the 60s and 70s. Newfoundland relatives would send recipes or ship ingredients. Non-Newfoundland households would attempt the steaming method, the molasses sauce, the dense cake-like texture. It tasted of home for transplanted families. It introduced others to Atlantic tradition. But outside Newfoundland, Figgy Duff faded as migration patterns changed and families assimilated to local traditions. The steaming method seemed complicated. The taste seemed too particular. By the 90s, most non-Newfoundland tables had defaulted to pan-Canadian sweets, cookies, cakes, mainstream desserts. Figgy Duff stayed in Newfoundland where it belonged, still made by families who never stopped. But across the rest of Canada, it became memory, something someone's grandmother made once, years ago, when relatives from the Rock came for Christmas. Thanks for taking this trip down memory lane with us. If this brought back Christmas memories you haven't thought about in years, hit that like button. It really helps us keep making these nostalgic deep dives. And subscribe so you never miss when we uncover more lost Canadian food traditions. Got a dish we missed? Drop it in the comments. Until next time, keep those food memories alive. See you in the next video.